Thank you very much, Kurt. As you can see, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 3 this morning. I want to encourage you to find a Bible, phone app, something like that, where you can dive in with us. We're, of course, going to put some of that on the screen as well. But, you know, if you've been around here enough, you know we're nothing fancy. We're just going through the Bible, trying to hear from God as best we can. I try my best to share what God's Word's trying to say and not try to add too much of Brandon's thoughts along the way. So that we can, best of our abilities, kind of hear what God's trying to say to us today. So we're following this story, right? Exodus is the idea of the exodus of God's people, exodus of Israel out of Egypt. And it's kind of a two-part story, the book of Exodus. You have the first half is all about the redemption of these people from slavery. The second half of the book is these people have left Egypt. They're at the base of Mount Sinai, and they're getting this new covenant and commandments from God at the base of Mount Sinai. So you kind of have two acts of this play in the book of Exodus. And so far, we're just kind of at the beginning points of this redemption story, this story of God pulling his people out of Egypt. The story of this is God's story. This is the story of God's people and God's people Israel, but it's also our story, as we've talked about before. If you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus, of course, being Jewish, was the founder of our faith. Paul says in Romans that we have grafted onto that history and that story. So it's their story, God working with this people group and us grafting into them, ultimately being the people of faith that are following God. And so this story is a powerful, important story. You've seen so far that God's people went to Egypt for rescue. This whole story is about redemption or rescue or salvation. They were in famine up in Israel. They were in famine in that area. And, you know, through Jacob and Joseph, at that time in the story in Genesis, they went down into Egypt to escape the famine. They've now been there for 400 years in Egypt. And what started off as a place of rescue has become a place of slavery for them in that 400 years. It has moved to oppression and exploitation and violence and murder and slavery is where they're under in Egypt at this time. What they need again is rescue. And so the story is kind of saying, like, who's going to rescue them? God, do you see what your people are going through, and are you going to rescue your people? God sends, we saw yesterday, this character that's going to be a prominent character through Exodus, Moses. Moses is the rescuer. He's the one that God's going to use to rescue. But we saw last week that he himself needed rescued 2 specific times. When he was a baby and the Hebrew midwives saved and spared, or sorry, not that wasn't that one. When his mother put him in the basket and sent him in the reeds and he saved his life there. Also when he fled from the Pharaoh, after he had stood up for the oppression of the Egyptian slaves. So 2 times he needed rescue. So you have this story of this guy. At this point, he has fled Egypt. He is out of Egypt. He's away from the Hebrew people. He is out in Midian. Midian is modern-day Saudi Arabia to the east of Egypt. And he's over in there, and he's built a life there. He's married one of the daughters of the priest of Midian, Jethro, and he has had a child with that woman, and you'll see here today that he's a shepherd in that area. He's built a life apart from all the drama of Egypt, all the stresses of his people, the Hebrew people in Egypt, and he's living over there. But the question is still looming, where is God? Where is God when this stuff is going on? Is he going to act? Does he see? Does he care? Is he going to do anything about what's going on in their story? And that is a prominent question that we all ask at different levels and different times in our lives. God, where are you? Do you see? Do you care what's happening in my life? Do you see or care what's happening in the world? And this is the big question that's happening in the story here. And we saw at the end of last week, you see the hint that God's going to start to do something. It says that God saw, that he heard, that he remembered his covenant with his people, that he knew the oppression, and it kind of leaves it hanging like God's aware, so to watch out that something is going to happen. God is going to jump in and do something in the scenario. That's the big backstory that we're jumping into. So verse 1 of chapter 3, it says, Moses was pasturing the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So as I said a second ago, this is Moses' scenario now. Midian, outside of Egypt, outside of all the drama of all of it. He's got a wife, got a kid. He's just a shepherd, and he's sitting there shepherding the flock. And he goes to the wrong mountain, apparently. He goes to the mountain of God. Of course, they're calling it the mountain of God later, not at Moses' time, right here at this moment of the story. This becomes Mount Sinai. This is the mountain where God speaks to his people. And he's shepherding the flock in this area, kind of minding his own business. It's an interesting thing just to highlight just for a moment, that it seems like Moses has finally found some peace in life. Right? He got out of all the drama that was there. He got out of all the... he's escaped and he's alive. He was supposed to be dead. He's tried to stand up for the oppressed multiple times, and it hasn't gone well for him. And it seems like he's just out in retreat, on his own, living a peaceful life. Don't harm me, I won't harm you. Let's just shepherd the thing, raise the kids, and let's move on. The white picket fence, this is what he's got going on here, right? So he's shepherding this flock on the wrong mountain. And it says in verse 2 that the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire. From the midst of the bush he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not being consumed. Okay, so two things we're going to have to point out here. So you see, so far he's called it the mountain of God, and then it says the angel of the Lord. These are two different names for God, right? God and Lord. This is how we're seeing it in the English translation. In the Hebrew, this is Elohim and Yahweh are the two different terms of God. These are important for us to know because you're going to see these two pop up over and over again throughout the story today. And it's really important because part of this story is for Moses and then for us to understand the identity of who God is. And so he's going to the mountain of Elohim. Elohim is the generic deity from the Hebrew language. So the idea is like this is deity, the mountain of deity. And Lord, when you say here that the angel of the Lord, capital L Lord we see in English, is Yahweh, which is the personal name of God that God describes himself as to the people of Israel. I am Elohim Yahweh. I am deity, and I am personally your God. This is my personal name. So just kind of mark those for a minute because we're going to need to have that understanding as we walk through this. So as he's going to the mountain of Elohim deity, the angel of Yahweh appears, and he appears in this burning fire. So it says the word appears. This is the idea of reveals. So this is the idea of revelation. God is revealing himself to Moses. This is such an important, woven thing throughout all of the scriptures. God is a God who reveals himself. We, to understand God, need revelation. If we have no revelation, what we end up with is speculation. Just a bunch of humans trying to guess and assume what we think a God, if there is a God, might be like. The only way for us to truly know God, apart from us just speculating and guessing on our own, that God has to reveal himself to us. And the scriptures make it very clear, multiple different ways and times in which God reveals himself. There's three primary ways in which God reveals himself. One is creation. The Bible describes that the creation itself is a revelation of God, a revelation of Elohim. There is a deity. That as you see in creation, as you see the splendor, the creativity, the power, the majesty, all the things you see in creation, it's supposed to speak of God's very character. It's a revelation of God. The Bible is also referred to as a revelation of God. The idea that God, through his Holy Spirit, spoke to the human authors to write the words that God's laying on their heart. It's both a mix of human work and divine work. God revealing himself through this human work. So this is a revelation of God. The most primary revelation that the Bible describes is Jesus himself. God in the flesh. If you ever wonder, what is the nature and character of God? If Jesus is who he claims to be, which is God incarnate, then he is the greatest revelation that we have if you want to know the nature and character of God. Here, Moses is getting a direct revelation from God. God revealing himself in what is seen here, he calls a marvelous sight or a miraculous thing here. What's happening is there's a bush on fire. He's out shepherding the flock. He sees this bush burning off on the side, and he can see that it's a roaring fire. It's the kind of fire that's consuming this bush. The kind of fire that's before you know, it's going to start dying down as it just eats up the bush. But he notices it just keeps going. It just keeps burning. That's not like any other fire we've ever seen. There's a history to a fire. There's a start. There's a power that it goes up into a big, massive flame. Then it starts dying out. And when you're sitting around the campfire, you throw more on it so it gets strong again. He's watching this thing. No one's putting more fuel on the fire, and it just keeps burning. There's something odd going on in this story. He looks at it, and Moses says in verse 3 that I must turn aside to see this marvelous sight, this great, strange, important phenomenon. I got to go closer. He's inquisitive. He wants to know what's going on, and he's going to get closer to this fire. This idea of marvelous sight or this great phenomenon. This is the idea of a miracle. Now, again, I'm going to just spend a little bit of time to talk about miracles for a minute, because if we don't understand miracles, we're not going to understand Exodus. Exodus is loaded with God doing miracles. And if we're like the naturalists that say there is no such thing as a miracle, you're going to have a hard time with Exodus. Right? The idea here is that, yes, God did create a natural world that works under the natural laws and orders of how he's designed this thing to work. That is the natural flow of how God designed this thing. If there is a God that created all of this, does he not also have the right and ability to interject himself anyway, anyhow he wants to, and do what he wants? If there is a God who created it all, is it a hard thought to think that he could jump in and do anything outside of the natural laws and order of things? Now, the idea is, like, I know, we're like, I've never seen a miracle, then is there a miracle? It's like, I think some of the stuff we take as natural is much more miraculous than we probably give it credit for. Even like I'm saying, the natural order of the world in which we see, there's much more miraculous to that than we give it credit for. The human that you are is much more miraculous than what we naturally give ourselves credit to see. I think we do see a bit more miracles than maybe what we give credit for. But the idea is, if a miracle was happening every day, it wouldn't be a miracle anymore. It would be the natural order of things. God can jump in and do as he wishes, when he wants, as he wants to do so. And he's doing something in this strange bush, where he is just burning this thing, and you can see that it's burning, but it's not going out. And it's enough to grab the attention of Moses to say, I got to get a little closer and see what's going on here. It says, verse 4, when the Lord, or when Yahweh saw him turn aside and look, God, or Elohim, called him. He called him in the midst of the bush. So Yahweh is God's personal name. This is what God's saying of himself. But when he's directing himself at this point to Moses, he's Elohim. He's deity. Deity comes up to Moses, and he calls out to him in the midst of the bush. Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Okay, so now this bush is burning and won't be consumed. Now it's talking to you. And it knows your name. Something creepy is going on here. And Moses, I don't know if we would say what he said. I might turn and run. What he says is, yeah, I'm here. Why is this bush talking to me? It's got to be part of his thought process, right? Here I am. Then he said, do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground. So Moses, this is like a Elohim lesson for Moses, like a God deity lesson for Moses. He is a Hebrew child raised in Egypt under the gods of Egypt. He knows the idea of different deities, the idea that there are different gods in the world, and what he says, different spiritual presences in the world. And he's essentially saying here, like, okay, deity is talking to me. In this burning bush, he knows my name. And as I'm approaching deity, he says that the God is telling me not to get any closer and to take off my sandals. He's learning something about God. He's learning something about Elohim. He's learning that you can't approach too close. He's learning that there's a difference between him and God. He's learning that there's a respect factor here, needing to take off his sandals. That you can only approach so far, and you need to respect where you're at. Specifically, because where you're at is holy ground. The word holy, right? Like, we use that term to think of someone who's better than someone else, like they're holier than this person. The idea is it's separate, set apart, distinct, superior, removed profoundly beyond that kind of idea. The idea is a sanctuary or consecrated area. So it's the idea to say that God is God and you are not. There's a difference between humanity and God, is what the lesson that Elohim is trying to establish here with Moses. And then he gives him a second lesson, verse 6. He says, and he said to them, I am the Elohim or deity of your ancestors, the deity of Abraham, the deity of Isaac, and the deity of Jacob. So, burning bush, God reveals himself, Moses says, I'm here, and the two lessons he learns is, not so fast, you and I are different. And what you also need to learn is, I am the deity of your ancestors, Moses, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God of your ancestors. What is his response to all of this? The response that you see anyone who's got this kind of encounter with God. It says that Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The scripture is littered with story after story of people that are revealed like the power and nature of God, and what it does is drop them to their knees in humility. You know, we can have all of our thoughts and understandings of God and our positions, and we have all, but when you encounter the power of God, human beings naturally drop to their knees in reverent fear and awe of that God. There is something distinctly different from God than who you and I are. And this is the lesson that Moses is learning. And as he learns the lesson, he responds as every human being would respond in that moment. You are leading to the point where he's hiding his face. He's like moving his face to the side because he can't look directly. He can't keep focusing on deity, on that burning bush. And it says that he was afraid. This carries both the idea of trembling and fear, but also reverence, honor, and awe. He's understanding there's a difference between Elohim, this deity of my ancestors, and myself. Moving on from there, in verse 7, it says that the Lord said, so Yahweh said, I have seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their outcry because of their taskmasters, and I am aware of their sufferings. I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and bring them up to a land of good, to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So he's saying here, Yahweh is saying to Moses after this encounter, he's saying stuff with more detail than what we saw last week, where it says that he's seen his people, he has heard his people, and he is aware of his people. The idea that he's looked and examined, he's listened and heeded what they're saying, he's noticed and he knows, he understands their oppression, the affliction, the exploitation, the violence, the murder that's happening. He understands their outcry, their wailing, and their call for help, and he understands their suffering, their pain, and their sorrows. And he calls them my people. So this question that's been looming, does God aware of what's happening in Egypt? Is he going to do anything about it? What God's saying is here, I see, I hear, I know what my people are going through. I know the oppression, the suffering that they're going through, and I'm going to do something about it, is what he's saying. I have come down to rescue them. I've come to my people to save my people, is what he's saying. Save them from the power of the Egyptians. This is going to be a power struggle between Pharaoh, who views himself as a god, and this deity who's speaking to Moses. There's going to be a power struggle at play. I'm going to rescue my people from the power of Egypt, is what he says. I'm going to bring them up. I'm coming down to bring them up. I'm rescuing them. I'm pulling them out of slavery. I'm bringing them up into something better and new. And what he says, I'm going to give them a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. This is a good place I'm sending them to. This is a spacious place I'm sending to. This is a place flowing, just oozing milk and honey. Are you a milk and honey person? I don't know. Like maybe a little milk in my tea, a little honey. I definitely do honey in my tea, but not a little. But what's he saying by milk and honey? He's saying it is an abundance. It's a place of abundance. It's a place of fertility. It's a place of prosperity. The picture I see here is the idea, it is the abundance of Eden, is what he's given them. He's always wanting to get them back to the start. I'm going to give you this place that is good like it was before. God's going to rescue his people and give them this land with the abundance of Eden in it. He says, now, verse 9, now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen their oppression with the Egyptians are oppressing them. Now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh so that you might bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. So here's what God's saying. God shows up in this bush. Hey, I'm here. Like, I am the God, the Elohim of your ancestors, of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Like, I'm here to rescue your people. I'm here to rescue my people. Moses, let's go. This is what he says here. His thing is, now come. Come with me, Moses. Let's go. I've shown myself to you. It's time for us to go do this. Come with me. I'm sending you. You're going to be my messenger. You're going to be my dispatch. You are going to be my mediator. You're going to speak between me and Pharaoh. You're going to speak between me and my people. You're going to be this mediator, my messenger. Moses, let's go, is what he's saying to him. What's Moses' response? Moses' response in verse 11 is, Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? What's his response? No, thank you. Find another person. I'm not up for this one. My right fighting, justice fighting days are over. I'm done with that. That's what I see as I'm reading this. I remember last week, 2 times he's a right fighter. He's going after the Egyptian who's treating the Hebrew slave in a negative way, and he's saving the priest's daughters from the shepherds that are pushing them away from the water. There's 2 times he's fighting for justice, and you see him as like this justice right fighter. And now God's saying, "Let's go do it. Let's go. Let's go take care of the oppression and save your people." And Moses is like, "I'm done with that. My days of that's a young man's game. I'm done with that anymore." Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to put too much into this maybe, but this is my thoughts as I'm looking through it. And I'm I remember in my 20s thinking yeah, we could change the world. And then you're in your 40s and you're I don't know. Let's just let's do the thing we need to do right in front of us and just kind of play it cool, take the sheep from here to there. And I got a wife and a kid, and let's just play it safe now. And then the 20s are all yeah, let's do it, let's change it. And then they're trying to change it, and then they get to a point where well, we didn't really change it. What, and then they get to a point where let's just have a wife and a kid, and let's just do the thing. And I don't know, maybe I'm definitely probably putting too much in this, but I think Moses is definitely saying he was let's fight for justice, and now he's I'm good, God. I'm not going to go do that, is what he's saying to him. Who am I? Well, I'm done with Egypt. I tried that before, and I almost died. I'm out of there. And who am I that I'm going to go to Pharaoh and bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? What's God's response to him? Just completely ignores God does this at times, right? Just completely ignores what Moses is saying. And his response is, assuredly, I will be with you. Moses, I'm not doing this. I'm going to be with you, Moses. I'm going to be with you in this, Moses. I'll be with you. And he says, I give you a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship on this mountain. You shall worship God at this mountain. So here's God's response to Moses saying, who am I? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be with you, Moses. And here's a sign that when you're done with all of it, you're going to be back at the same mountain worshiping God. How is that a sign? Right? If you want a sign, it's like Gideon and his fleece. Turn this thing water or turn this thing wet or dry. The sign is, I'm going to show you later after it's all over. He's not saying I'm going to do some miraculous thing here, which he already did in the bush, I guess. But he's not saying I'm going to do this thing to get you encouragement. He's essentially saying, Moses, you got to trust me. Moses, you got to have some faith here. When this is all over, boom, you're going to see it. And your faith is going to be growing like crazy through this. You're not going to see it now, but you'll see it then. Anyone ever been through that one? Remember, Cap and I were talking this week about this same idea, about how you're going through it and you're wondering, you're asking the questions like this, God, where are you? Do you care? What's going on here? And you fight your way through it, and God's in it, and you're in it, and you're kind of a mix of both. You don't really know what's happening. And then on the backside of some of these things that you've gone through, you can really see what God did that you couldn't see when you were going through it. And when you look back on it, you look back at it and say, man, God really was there in that one. And that knowledge builds your faith. So when the next one comes, you're still in that, God, where are you? But you can also have this thing built up to say, he was there last time. He'll probably be there again on this one. Over and over and over and over again as you build your faith throughout your life. That's life. Right? Moses is in this moment where God's saying, I'm going to be with you, Moses. And when it's all over, you're going to look back and see what happened. Is that enough for Moses? What do you think? Verse 13. Moses says to God, behold, I'm going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, the God of your fathers, your ancestors, has sent me to you. Now they will say to me, what's his name? What am I supposed to say to them? This is objection number 2. He's trying to find a way out again. All right, first one was, who am I? Now this one was, okay, let me get the story correct here, God. I'm going to go into Egypt, and I'm going to tell your people that how does he say it? The sons of Israel, that the God of your fathers has sent me to you. That's what I'm supposed to go tell them. The Elohim, the deity of your ancestors, is sent me to you. And they're just going to believe it? That's what they're going to do? He's got a history already when he's standing up for what he thinks is right, that the Hebrew people would say to him, who makes you prince and judge over us? Is what happened in last. He's already learned, maybe these people don't trust me. So I'm supposed to go to them, tell them the Elohim, the deity of the fathers, sent them to me, and they're just going to believe it. They're going to ask me, what's his name? It's a weird thing for us, right? What's his name? Why would God have a name? The idea here is maybe more profound in their culture than ours. The name of a person carries with it the renown or reputation or character of that person. So for example, my name is Brandon. That doesn't mean a whole lot. There's a lot of Brandons in the world. I could even mark it off and say there is a Brandon Michael Hudson. In the college I went to, there was another Brandon Michael Hudson. What are the odds? I don't know who had better grades or not, but whatever. Like there was another Brandon Michael Hudson. What's unique about my name is the fact that you get to know me something. When you get to know something of who I am, you get to know a bit of what makes me tick, what I think about, what's important to me, what I love, or what I struggle with, or what my character's like. As you get to know those things, the name Brandon has meaning. So what he's saying here is the Elohim of our ancestors, what does that matter? We're stuck in Egypt over here. Why do we care what the Elohim of our ancestors have to say? What's his reputation? What's his renown? What's his character? Is the question they're asking. And Moses is saying to God, I need to build up your reputation to the people if they're going to follow me. What's the answer? Here's how God answers them. God says to Moses, I am who I am. He says, this is what you shall say to the sons of Israel. I am has sent me to you. This is weird, poetic, strange language, right, that he's using here. Moses is saying, God, if I'm going to go to your people, you need to tell me a bit about who you are so I can describe you to these people if they're going to trust me. And God says, hey, Moses, I am who I am. What does that mean? What does it mean that I am who I am? The Hebrew word there carries the same idea of what we saw a little bit earlier. It's I am who I am, or I will be who I will be. I will be who or what I will be. I am who or what I am. Does that clear it all up for you? What he essentially is saying is, I am the fullness of everything that I am. I am continually and always everything that I am. If I declare myself to be whatever, I am that fully and forever. Is what he's saying by I am what I am. So essentially, if God reveals himself to be merciful, he is the fullness of mercy. And he is continually merciful. If God reveals himself to be just, he is the fullness of justice and the continuation of complete and full justice forever. If God is love, he is the fullness of love and continually love. And as we see in our story here, if God is with you, he is fully with you and continually with you, Moses. Because the same wording, just see it translated differently as what we saw before with this first question where he says, hey, who am I? God's answer is, I will be or I am with you. He uses the same language when he answered the first question. I will be or I am with you, Moses. They're going to want to know who you are, Yahweh. They're going to want to know, I am and will be with you forever and fully forever with you and with them. That's his response. Tell them I'm with them and I will always be with them. Powerful what he's saying here. So he says, go tell them go tell the sons of Israel that I am has sent you. What he's saying is, go tell him that the God who fully is, whoever he is with you, and that God is with you now and will be with you forever. Go tell them that. Which, even if you hear that, like, gosh, they got to have a lot of doubts if he's with them, right? They're stuck in slavery and oppression and everything going on, and they're got to be wondering, like, is he with me? God's saying is, I always have been. I'm the fullness of with you, and I will continue to be with you in this. So he says specifically to Moses, God furthermore said in verse 15, said to Moses, this is what you shall say to the sons of Israel. The Lord, Yahweh, the Elohim deity of your ancestors, the deity of Abraham, the deity of Isaac, and the deity of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forevermore, and this will be the name for all generations of those who call upon me. What's he saying? You go to them and you tell them that I, Yahweh, the Elohim deity of your ancestors, is with you. I have always been with you, and I always will be with you. Go and tell them that. That's the name of Yahweh. That's the name of their deity, the God who is with them forevermore, for all generations who call upon him. Not just them. Every generation that calls upon him, even us today. God is with you. I am who I am. He is the fullness and completeness of everything that he is. And if he is with you, he is always and completely with you. Even when it's hard to notice that and see that. Especially when it's hard to know that and see that. Now, he says to Moses in verse 16, go. Is this enough, Moses? Are you ready? Go. Go gather the elders of Israel together. Say to them that Yahweh, the Elohim of their fathers, Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, he appeared to me saying, I am concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I said to bring them up out of the oppressions of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. This is just review, so that's why I'm kind of going quick through it. To a land of flowing with milk and honey. Then they will pay attention to what you say. You and the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, Yahweh, the God, the Elohim deity of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. So what he's finally getting Moses to a point. He's like, okay, Moses, are you ready? He's invited him. He said, I'm going to send you. I'm going to do this work, and you are my mouthpiece for this work. Are you ready now? Let's go. Go into Israel, gather up the elders, tell them what I've told you to tell them. They're going to be with you. We're going to do all that I said that I'm going to do, and I'm going to bring you before Pharaoh, and this is your message to Pharaoh. Yahweh, the deity of our ancestors, wants you to let us go so we can worship for a bit outside of Egypt. That's going to be the message. And he says, specifically after that, verse 19, I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I will reach out a mighty hand and strike the Egyptians with all the miracles which I shall do in the midst of them, and after that they will let you go. And I will grant my people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. So he's both telling them what he's already told them that he's going to do, and then he's telling them even further story that when you get there and you tell him to let you go, he's not going to want to let you go. It's only going to be through compulsion. I'm going to have to force him. Like I said before, this is going to be a power struggle. And it's an interesting story as we'll walk through it, but at least kind of set the stage a little bit. It's a power struggle because the king of Egypt believes he is God. They view him as deity. And Yahweh, deity, is going to show him that you're not deity, and there's going to be a power struggle happening between these two. It's not going to happen without compulsion, he says. I'm going to reach out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the miracles that I'm going to do. It's weird that he uses that term, right? I'm going to reach out my hand, and I'm going to strike the Egyptians. Strike, we've already seen it last week, not in a positive form, right? We saw that the Egyptian slave master struck the Hebrew, and then we saw that Moses struck the Egyptian slave master. Both of these were not positive forms. So then the question here is God doing a positive or a negative? Is it okay for God to strike? This is always, I don't go down too far, but I have to address this for a bit, right? This is always one of our wrestles of like, well, if God's telling us to have better character and do better things, why does God do bad things? Why does God do the striking or harming of other people? This always comes back to like that idea of like, why does God like, let me come to this the best I think I've come to this. And I'm not saying there's a perfect easy answer for all of this, but here's my response is there is only one that has the ability to execute justice. And God's final demand of justice in his world is to remove evil from his world. And there's only really two ways to remove evil from this world. Is to save and utterly transform people by the gospel of Jesus Christ, or to remove those people from his world. And as harsh and hard as that is and sounds, God's the only one that has the right to make those kind of judgment decisions. We do not. We should not. We should not try to do that. That is not our role to try to exercise judgment. When Moses is doing it, it's not right for him. When the Egyptian is doing it, it's not right for him. It is God's rightful authority to do that. And I'm not saying that clears it all up and makes it easy. I'm just saying that is the picture that the Bible describes for these kind of hard questions, is that God is the one ultimately in control, and God's ultimate end is a world without evil, sin, and injustice. And you either have to transform those people that do it, us, or you have to remove them. So he says here, I'm going to strike Egypt with all the miracles, and they're going to let my people go after all of it, and I will grant my people favor in the sights of the Egyptians, so that when they go out, they will not go empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor, and the woman who lives in her house for articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and they will put them on your sons and daughters, and you will plunder the Egyptians. Even that seems like a negative, right? Plundering of a people that you overtook. This is very common practice in that day. Now, if you think through the story of this one, you have a group that's been oppressing and extracting from the Hebrew people for hundreds of years. And God says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm not only going to give you your freedom, and I'm going to take you to a land flowing with milk and honey, but as I do so, I'm going to give you the resources you need to go do that. The resources that were taken from you over 400 years. I'm going to give that. And as he says, it's not like a fight that's going to happen for it. He says, you're going to have favor over the Egyptians, and all you're going to do is ask. This is not like the other people that are plundering and just taking. You're going to ask, and they're going to give it to you, is what he says. All of this kind of speaks of the word that God gave Abraham back in the day in Genesis 15, where he says, know for certain that your descendants will be as strangers in a land that is not their own. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, and I will also judge the nation whom they will serve, and afterwards they will come out with many possessions. The idea of what's happening in this passage is twofold. You have Moses learning the identity of Yahweh, that he is holy and different than him, that he is the deity of their ancestors, that he in his very name is the great I am, the fullness of everything that he is, always everything that he is, and what he is with them. And he's calling Moses to go, that he's heard, that he's seen, that he's aware of the suffering, oppression, outcry of his people, and that he is sending Moses as a mediator to save his people, to bring them out of their land, of Egypt, into a land flowing with milk and honey, the land of the abundance of the garden, and not without a fight, but they're going to go with favor and plunder. I think God's word for us today is whether we ever have some kind of like major call of God to do something, like even in that, like the idea that Moses had this call to go do something, what he did know is that God was with him. The big idea here is that I love this understanding of Yahweh, that he is the great I am. He is the fullness of everything that he is. He is it fully and completely. And what he is for us today, just like he was for them, is with us. Whatever he asks, whatever challenge puts in front of us, whatever life has in front of us, he is for us, and ultimately his goal is to save his people. As we saw this at the end of last week, the goal is to save his people. Ultimately, all of this is going to lead to Jesus, where he is the salvation of our souls, the very one that gives us life and life abundantly, life everlasting, life in the full and complete Eden, recreated world with all of the abundance. All of these stories are pointing forward to Jesus and his story and the fullness of what comes through him. But throughout all of it, as we're waiting for some of these things, as we're walking through some of these things, understand that your God, Yahweh, is with you continually and always. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we come to you today, Lord, a lot of us in many different places. Lord, sometimes the heaviness and difficulty of life have hit hard, and it's hard to believe and trust and see where you're at and where you're active. Lord, even as sometimes we look at the world and see the struggles that are in the world, wondering, where are you in all of those things? Why have you not come back yet? Lord, help us to see and be reminded that you are a God that acts. You are a God that sees. You are a God that fully acts in salvation of your people, whether it's through Moses here as the mediator, but more importantly as Jesus, the mediator between us and God. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to see that you are a God that cares, that you are a God that is with us, and that you're a God that is saving your people. Lord, I pray today that those in this room that may not know the loving grace and mercy of Jesus Christ, that today would be a day of acceptance of that grace and relationship with you. Lord, as we live throughout the days beyond our salvation, waiting for your final return, Lord, I pray that you'd give us a greater faith and trust that you are a God who is with us, and you are a God that is working towards restoration and the fixing of your world, even if a lot of difficulty happens before then. Lord, just build our faith today. Remind us that you're with us. May you be glorified in your church. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.